Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and we are going to be going through the return on your investment for Duel of the Fates, Poverty Patrol, Egnards, that's Peridia Patrol because it's a poverty event and the dead boys are poverty. There's only a slight bit of sarcasm there. I actually think they're a very good investment and we'll show, but you know, we got to call it Poverty Patrol just to piss Egnards off. So it's Poverty Patrol. And then finally, Coven of Shadows. A lot of players have been asking me which of these events is best, which one do I find has the most value. So we're going to be kind of analyzing that. I put together a spreadsheet that I will link in the video description, along with our link to the Discord. Go check it out, guys. Want to just give a quick shout to the channel members, as always, for all of their continued support. If you guys are ever interested, link down below. Really appreciate everybody just keeping the faith, believing in me through good, bad, thick, thin. I love that you guys have seen this account grow over the years. I love that I get to see you guys grow, and I just really can't thank you enough for everything, guys. So let's get in here and let's analyze these new assault battles. All right, so we're gonna start off with going to the to a spreadsheet that I created, a Google sheet. So let's go there, and then we're gonna take and we're gonna move the fat face. Oops, that's the webcam frame, idiot. Come on, Phil, you can do this. I think that's it. Click the group, Phil. There we go. So we're gonna move the fat face over here. So we're gonna move it up there. So what I did is I went and I grabbed screenshots of the, Duel of the Fates Assault Battle reward tiers. And what I did over here is I just broke out the tier with the crystals you get, and then the minimum and maximum value based on the rewards. So in tier 3, I did not evaluate any of the mod stuff. I do not think there's a crystal value that I feel is worth associating with any of those materials. I love mods. I do not think any of that is worth putting a crystal value on. Hello, Nim. In tier 4, I have a minimum value of 300. That is basically saying you're going to get the green signal data, which has the lowest crystal value, and then either the chromium transistors or rhodium heat sinks. I don't put a crystal value there. They're useless. The maximum value you can get is the bronzium wiring, which we're going to be for this video using all of Egnard's premium value charts here. He has the relic materials broken out here based on the 500 crystal packs. If you guys ever want to see more of that, please go join his Buy Me a Beer stuff. That's where that is. I have access, but I don't want to share it for too long. So there are 600 crystals for that. And then the white signal data actually has the highest return from a crystal value there. Tier 5, the lowest minimum value there is actually getting arrow magnifiers. And that's because on Egnard's premium value charts, those 500 crystal packs that you can get arrow magnifiers for are valued at 113 crystals per piece. So you can only get 4 of them when you can get 6 of the impulse detectors. And then, of course, the white signal data, again, kind of coming through as the highest value from a crystal cost there, of 30 of them at 15 crystals per piece, getting us to 450. And then, of course, your 100 crystals. Finally, the final tier is Gerda keypads or droid brains with your 100 crystals. And then down below, we have the refresh cost broken out as well. So you can see what your minimum profit and or loss is for each of these varying things if you did decide to do the refresh. So that's Duel of the Fates. Poverty Patrol, similar thing, got our rewards up here. Now, the crystal cost here is a little bit different because the one thing I did want to call out is that in tier 4, you're getting Kyrotex. Now, I have the minimum value set at 14 crystals per piece, half of market value, and then I have them at full market value. You are more than welcome to just say, hey, this tier, all I'm getting is 100 crystals, and I'm perfectly okay with that if you get a lot of Kyrotech. I didn't feel that was fair to the overall game, but at least it's fair there, right? Similar situation up here. We've got the next tier with the relic materials. The minimum value is actually if you get arrow magnifiers, because again, you're getting more of something with an equal crystal cost in impulse detectors. And then of course the Zimbalist cards, if you actually do the math, the 78 crystals per piece multiplied by that 8 is more than 4 by 113. Now that's only valuating if you get arrows, because again, if you get chromium transistors or rhodium heat sinks, those are 0 value. And then the maximum value, getting bronzium wiring and getting 6 impulse detectors gives you the highest crystal return. Then the final tier of Poverty Patrol has a Gerda keypad, and the maximum value is actually if you get Omicrons. I put Omicrons at 400 crystals per piece. That is valued based on the GL event refresh cost. If you think after Conquest, you get that Galactic Legend event. Those are 200 crystal refreshes for half of the amount of currency you need to get an Omicron. So that's where they're at, that 400 crystals. So you actually get a pretty decent return from a crystal perspective if you get Omicrons. Bear in mind with that event, if you don't want the Omicrons, if you're looking at it from a gear perspective, bear that in mind and act accordingly, that your minimum value could potentially just be the 100 crystals. I don't think that's fair, but I can understand it from if you're looking at this and trying to break it down, those Omicrons could potentially be a detriment to you. Then finally, we have the Coven of Shadows event. This is Ahsoka's stuff. Again, tier 2, I only valuated the Kyrotech. This is at 14 crystals, half of market value, and this is at full market value. I did not valuate the shards because if you go back to the Poverty Patrol and Duel of the Fates, I cut out the levels where the character shards are. The reason for that is because this tiers 3, 4, 5, and 6 have a requirement of bare minimum being 7-star. So it's not really fair to value the shards that you could get when you can't even participate in these tiers until the characters are 7-star anyway. So that's why we didn't include the shards here, because if you need these shards, then you can't get these rewards. So it's not really, what are we doing there then, right? So minimum value for that 210 and 420. Then you get to the tier 3. Now your minimum value here would be getting Zimbato cards, Gerda keypads, and the white signal data. If you add all that up, I have the values up here, you're going to get to 2,400 crystals. With them a maximum value of 3,000 crystals, if you can get the arrow magnifiers or impulse detectors, doesn't matter. The droid brains, and then of course the blue signal data has the most return there. With your refresh cost of 1,500 crystals, you get your minimum and maximum profit based on the varying drops inside of the event, right? And again, we did that for everybody. So then if we go to our summary page here, if you look at and we'll go to the crystal value analysis. Duel of the Fates has a minimum crystal value of 2,600 and a maximum of 38. Poverty Patrol is 2,700 and 4,900, and Coven of Shadows is 2,600 and 3,500. If you include the final refreshes, you get to 2,900, 4,400, 3,400, 7,100, and then 35 and 5,000. One thing to note here is Poverty Patrol has a 2 times refresh. So if you look at the Poverty Patrol from a crystal perspective, you have the best chance of getting a lot of crystal value there because that refresh of the Omicrons. If those Omicrons aren't valuable to you, if those Kyrotech and some of these other things, if they don't hold as much value, this event does lose a lot of the value it could offer you from a crystal perspective. I didn't think it was fair to cut that out because there's a lot of players where that would be valuable, but it's just informational to see that from a crystal perspective, Poverty Patrol is the best of the bunch from a crystal value, barring you hold value to everything presented out of those rewards. So there is, some analysis there before you jump on that. Do you evaluate everything at that crystal value? So what about returning, the ROI, right? How many events until I make back my investment? For Duel of the Fates, I used white, green, and blue signal data, and then Zimbato cards, impulse detectors, air magnifiers, Gerda keypads, and droid brains. So as you can see, I broke out all of the number of events that you have. And the idea there is you need 165 white signal data by 2 characters. If you look in Duel of the Fates, you can get a maximum of 45 white signal data. And then multiplying this number by 3 is recognizing that you only, you're not going to get white signal data every time. You're going to get a mix of other things. So that multiplication of 3 basically says, hey, you're probably not going to get this every time. Here's the, makeup for it, right? Similar situation with the green and the blue signal data. You're taking into account the chance that you get the other materials. Zimmetal cards, impulse detectors, arrow magnifiers, Gerda keypads, droid brains. In Poverty Patrol, there's no signal data, so you will never get your signal data back. And then I broke out these, while also including the Omicrons you would get. While this isn't an ROI, it's not fair to pretend that you're not going to get the Omicrons that are going to run while you would earn back your Gerda keypads and droid brains, right? And again, what this 36 is representative of, right? This means it's going to take you 36 events to get Gerda keypads and to get droid brains to make up for what you spent. The logic here is you need 60 total Gerda keypads, right? That's the 20 times 3. You're going to divide by 5 because you can get a drop of 5. But you're sharing that drop with Gerda keypads, droid brains, and Omicrons. So you're not going to get 5 every single time. You have a 33% chance. That's where this 3 comes in. So it's going to take you 3 years to make up your Gerda keypads and droid brains. And in that time, you will have accumulated 3 full Omicrons. For Coven of Shadows, as we've said before, it is a very quick, direct turnaround in 8 events for droid brains, 8 events for Gerda keypads, 12 for impulse detectors and arrow magnifiers, and 15 for Zimmetal cards, and then up here for your signal data. One thing to bear in mind is for Duel of the Fates, if you spend that refresh on the final tier, you are only potentially getting Gerda keypads and droid brains. Similar situation with the Poverty Patrol. If you do that refresh, you're only potentially getting Gerda keypads, droid brains, or Omicrons. For Coven of Shadows, you can get all of these materials for that refresh. When you look at the refresh here, right, you get potentially, again, a mix of those materials when you do the refresh. So the number of events to make back, that you can now, again, when I say make back, you're spending crystals, but we're finding value in that. But you can kind of see where we're heading with that from a refresh perspective. Coven of Shadows is going to allow you to make back these resources, the full amount of resources significantly faster, because in the other tiers, you're only looking at your Relic 8 materials, where here it's including all of this stuff, which is crazy. So I did want to, show that out because that is an important situation. Then we have the fully loaded analysis. And this is this is kind of, I'd say, the meat and bones of this, and then we'll kind of talk high level. The fully loaded analysis is saying, hey, for Duel of the Fates, we're going to include Queen Amidala. With our Poncho Bros, with Master Qui-Gon, with Padawan Obi-Wan, you need to include Queen Amidala. So you're going to take all of these things up here, and you're going to, basically, add you're going to multiply by 3 and divide by 2 kind of thing. You're basically saying, hey, we need to verify, like, this is going for 2 characters. I need to add 1, so that's what this is doing down here. And you kind of see that it makes sense that, hey, it's going to be a little bit longer to get everything, but that's how long it will take you to subsidize your Queen Amidala from this event. For the Poverty Patrol, you'll notice it's a copy paste, right? There's nothing else that's required because guess what? It's 3 dead boys and that's it. There's nothing else that needs subsidized. There's no other characters to really add there. Not that you couldn't do others, but like those 3 work perfectly fine in other teams. Relic levels notwithstanding, like you're fine for them. The Poncho Bros, you need that help. For Coven of Shadows, this is including all of the Relic 9 requirements for Ahsoka. If you take into consideration the Fulcrum, Commander Tano, and Snips, and then GL Ahsoka herself, if you include all of those requirements, these are the number of events that are required to earn back all of the resources that you spent. One of the things I found really jarring here is that if you compare the Zimmetal cards, this is the only Relic material where it's a longer return for Coven of Shadows than it is for Poverty Patrol or Duel of the Fates. But the impulse detectors and Era Magnifiers are so much faster in Coven of Shadows than they are in the other events, because you have the potential to get 10 of each of these materials comparative to only 4 or 6 impulse detectors in Duel of the Fates and Poverty Patrol. And then the Gerda keypads and droid brains, you will make back more of them from Coven of Shadows, right? You'll make back more of them from Coven of Shadows for all those requirements before you would make them back for Poverty Patrol. Now, Duel of the Fates will beat you by 8 months, because there's only 3 characters rather than 4 that are shown here. There's a lot of data here. My assessment of this is that, and again, Egnards and I were talking about this kind of offline. When you're analyzing these events, I think a lot of it's going to depend on where your account is, and it's going to depend on the opportunity cost. Like, I will frickin' scream and yell at you if you don't take your dead boys when you're thinking about farming Galactic Legend Ahsoka Tano. The dead boys need to be the first things you take to Relic 7, because you can at least earn rewards from their Relic 7s. Hey, their relics will help you get some relic materials. Might not sound like a crazy amount, but maybe that gets you through, some extra raids that you don't have to do. Right? Like, that's huge. Similar situation with like the Poncho Bros. Hey, you bring them to Relic 7. Same with, Poverty Patrol. You can earn Relic 8 materials. You can earn back materials you didn't even spend from getting them to Relic 7. So those are really, really good investments. The big thing with the Coven of Shadows, and why I think it's going to get a lot of attention from myself and others, is that your time frame for turning that around is so fast, and the refresh comparative to the other ones is so much more lucrative. Your minimum maximum profit, your min-max profit from the refresh is so crazy here that it really does make sense to do this refresh every single time, even over something like the Poverty Patrol and Duel of the Fates. Now, this is not taking into consideration what we would call like opportunity cost. Is it worth it to skip doing Relic 9s on the Dead Boys or Master Qui-Gon Padawan Obi-Wan to just get to Ahsoka's event as fast as possible? I think a lot of that is going to be dependent on the kind of account you have, the amount of money you're willing to spend, where you sit resource-wise. All of that is a big deal. There's a lot of conversation that could happen there. Because again, you're looking at a 16-month return for your Relic 9 materials on these guys. If you could get them to Relic 9 super early in your account's lifespan before you would have Commander Ahsoka Tano, because she's a Proving Grounds character, maybe it makes sense to bring them up early, and that by the time that you are ready for Ahsoka, you will have made back these materials and more. Obviously, you're still going to be very short on your signal data and impulse detectors and Era Magnifiers that you spent, that if those become a problem, then maybe it makes sense just to save. Personally, the fat fill, hey, where do I covet this the most? I personally believe when I look at these things, I think that the Relic 9 on Ahsoka makes the most sense. The Coven of Shadows is, I think, the best of these overall. If you're an endgame player, I could make a very good argument that the Poverty Patrol and the Omicrons would be better. I think for almost everybody else who, if you're like a massive whale, I think Poverty Patrol is probably the best. But I think if you're a standard player, the Coven of Shadows will be the one that I think will help you the most long term, because those refreshes will include all these other materials. And if you look at the profit loss, that refresh is giving you the most value in return, which is going to allow your roster to grow the fastest. So that's the end of the video, folks. I hope this helps. I hope this was a informative video, that it kind of sheds some light onto what we're thinking. Whoops, fat face went away. Hope it sheds some light just kind of into how I'm looking at those events and how you can potentially look at them. Again, that link is down below. And do shout out, as much as we love to poke fun of Egnards and call it Poverty Patrol, do want to shout him out for having those values and allowing me to use those, because that's such a great resource, and he does a really good job of creating those spreadsheets and kind of getting those values out. So appreciate Egnard's nonetheless, even if it is Poverty Patrol. So love you guys. May the force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.